According to a new report written by 5 different International Monetary Fund economists, completely debunks once again the idea of trickle-down economics. Now, this report, as I said, by these 5 different economists and researchers, found that when the top earners of society make more money, it actually slows down economic growth for everyone else. Oh, that's weird. So what happens if poorer people earn more money? Well, obviously, the entire country implodes, right? Well, no. According to the study, society as a whole tends to benefit more when poorer people aren't as poor. Interesting. Now, the researcher calculated that when the richest 20% of society increased their income by 1 percentage point, so not very much, right? The annual rate of growth shrinks by nearly 0.1% within 5 years. Now, that shows that, of course, that the benefits do not trickle down. The researchers wrote in the report. Now, they analyzed over 150 different countries in this report. Now, by contrast, when you gave poor people 20% more when it comes to their earnings, so they earn 20% more instead of give them, right? Nobody says anything about actually giving them all this money, right? Just increasing their wages by 20%. Their income grew by, they saw their income grow by 1 percentage point, and the rate of growth increases by nearly 0.4% in the same period. So the authors explain that high levels of income inequality actually drag down growth because poor people struggle to pay for healthcare and education, which of course hurts society as a whole. Well, if you can't get healthcare to treat illnesses, or you can't get educated to get better jobs, of course you're not going to be able to be as successful. And your society is not going to be successful, especially when there are a lot of poor people compared to a very minuscule amount of rich people. No matter what, you will always have poor people in an economy like this that will outnumber the number of very, very wealthy people. Does this make sense? Now, the report points out issues causing income inequality. So what causes income inequality? Well, here are some of the reasons. More lax hiring and firing regulations. So when you don't have regulations on, for example, or protections on workers to prevent them from getting fired for arbitrary reasons, for example, if you fire somebody, being able to fire somebody for being gay, part of the LGBT community, that's a lax firing requirement. When you don't have that protection for someone. Things like laws like right to work, for example, is another one. Lower minimum wages relative to the median wage. You keep your minimum wage low, you're going to create more income inequality. And of course, less prevalent collective bargaining and trade unions are also associated with higher market inequality. Less labor unions, as we've seen, the less you have of unions and the less you have of minimum wage, and of course health and education, which, by the way, all of that stuff goes hand in hand with the ability to be able to collectively bargain. You eliminate your ability to collectively bargain, you're going to have lower wages, you're going to have lower health benefits. Sometimes you won't even get health benefits through your job, or they'll be more expensive than what you can use, and I've definitely seen that before. You're not going to have good outcomes. You're going to have more economic inequality because more of that money is going to stay concentrated at the very top. Now, the study said that there was also growing evidence to suggest that rising influence of the rich and stagnant incomes of the poor and middle classes caused the financial crisis. Now, wait a minute, I thought that was caused by Fannie and Freddie Mac and giving loans to poor people that they couldn't afford to do, predatory shit loans, as they used to call them. Oh no, it turns out that it's the influence of the rich people and stagnant incomes over of the poor and the middle class. That's what caused it. Because then they actually had to borrow to get a home. And with predatory lending practices, more people borrow with less collateral. And you had, of course, predatory loans in the part of our predatory capitalist system. And, of course, you get a devastating financial crash afterwards. In particular, studies have argued that prolonged period of higher inequality in advanced economies was associated with the financial crisis by intensifying leverage, overextension of credit, and a relaxation in mortgage underwriting standards, and allowing lobbyists to push for financial deregulation. It turns out it wasn't poor people that caused the crash. It was rich people pushing for deregulation, using all of their excess money to lobby government for deregulation, as well as predatory lending practices. Congratulations, richest 1%, you built that. Now, what do they suggest on how to fix this? Well, Republican heads are about to explode, because investment in healthcare and education, progressive taxation, redistribution of wealth, oh my god, socialism, better social safety nets, cracking down on tax avoidance and evasion, and more incentives on working and saving. Those are the policy prescriptions that the IMF says will tackle this issue and will actually help grow the economy, as well as solve the widening issue of income inequality. This is what we should do. We need to have a progressive revolution when it comes to passing these types of policies to actually help everyone, and not just the super wealthy, which we have been doing for the last 30 years. That's what we need to do. They end out this study by saying fiscal policy plays a significant role in addressing income inequality in many advanced economies, but the redistributive role of fiscal policy could be reinforced by greater reliance of all of the above. And there's some that say, oh, but redistribution of wealth is a horrible thing. We have already presided over the largest redistribution of wealth from the poor, the middle class, to the very, very wealthy over the last 30 years. All we're calling for is to get some of that redistributed back that has been stolen from us, that has been stolen from our labor, and given to those at the very, very top who no longer use it or need it. What they use it for is to lobby our government so they can get even more money. It is a never-ending cycle, and it needs to stop. And that money needs to go back to the workers who can spend it and help the economy, because that's the only thing that's going to help everyone, and not just the people at the very, very top.